Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, person of interest in custody after a deadly shooting during a 4th of July parade in suburban Chicago leaves at least 6 people dead. We'll bring you a look at the tragic attack. Now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned, who will help pregnant mothers and the children who might have been aborted? Christian foster care and adoption agencies are challenging the church to take action. 2 different shipwrecks on the same site. How these discoveries from ancient times are providing us a look into the world of the early church. And faith over fear. It's a common expression, but perhaps easier said than done. One former Miss America tells CBN how she overcame her fears.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin in Illinois, where a person of interest is in custody after a gunman on a rooftop opened fire on a 4th of July parade in the affluent Chicago suburb of Highland Park, killing at least 6 people and wounding at least 30 more. CBN's Matt Galka has our report.
The panic and the terror on full display during 4th of July celebrations in Illinois. You can hear what sounded like never-ending gunfire as 6 people were killed and dozens more were hurt in Highland Park during a daytime 4th of July parade. Panicked parents did anything they could to try and protect their children.
When the shot stopped again is when we decided we had to run, so we started shooting again. And we ran behind the building, and I put my son in a dumpster.
And I just looked back at my dad, and right behind him, this girl just fell in cold blood and just died.
Police say a gunman started firing into the crowd of parade watchers at around 10 a.m., turning the Independence Day celebration into a mass shooting. The FBI is helping to investigate how and why the suspect started firing from a rooftop in the Chicago suburb. He then managed to get away during the chaos. Police identified Robert E. Cremo III as a person of interest following the shooting, and he was taken into custody Monday evening after a brief chase by police.
These are the kinds of injuries that are seen in war. And these poor kids and families who went to a parade and then, now people just don't feel you can go anywhere.
The devastating scene at the parade showed the aftermath of what was meant to be a celebration of families and freedom. Victims being treated range from children to senior citizens, anywhere from 8 to 85. The tragedy led some towns around the country to cancel their festivities out of fear and caution.
There are no words for the kind of evil that shows up at a public celebration of freedom, hides on a roof, and shoots innocent people with an assault rifle.
But the show went on in Philadelphia, where another shooting sent a crowd of thousands into a frenzy. Police say 2 officers were hit while working security during the concert and fireworks event. Authorities baffled about where the gunfire came from. Both officers were released from the hospital overnight.
We have to come to grips with what this country is about right now. We had a beautiful day out there today, except for some nitwit either shooting from a window or shooting from somewhere who has a gun that probably shouldn't have had it.
Matt Galka, CBN News.
In addition to the Highland Park shooting, the city of Chicago was shaken by a surge of violence over the 4th of July weekend that left 7 people dead and 54 wounded. Turning now to the aftermath of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. Progressive Democrats and activists have been urging the Biden administration to take action to make sure abortion is still available. And many have been angry with the president's and White House's responses to the court's ruling, saying they're not enough. Progressive strategist Max Burns, speaking about the fact that the decision on abortion was leaked in May, told The Hill it looks like the administration doesn't have a plan. You genuinely think this decision hadn't even leaked because it seems very clear there has been no real planning from the White House. I don't know how you get caught by surprise on a pre-announced decision. Democrats have been pushing to make abortion a major issue in this year's midterm elections, but rising inflation has been the top priority for voters. The biblical mandate to care for the modern-day widow and orphan takes on new meaning now that Roe versus Wade is no longer the law of the land. But who will help pregnant moms and the children who might have been aborted have a chance at life? Christian foster care and adoption agencies are challenging the church to answer this renewed call. Caitlin Burke explains.
Nearly a year ago, when Texas enacted the most restrictive abortion law in the country, there was a significant increase of women considering adoption.
It probably started about 45 days after the Texas heartbeat bill went into effect. A lot of the women who were calling us just had questions about adoption.
Sherry Statler, head of Christian Homes and Family Services in Tyler, Texas, says it's happening again with the Roe v. Wade decision.
It's been a very busy week. We're just thrilled that they call us, and we're happy to help them sort out their options related to the pregnancy, but also help them deal with lots of other crises that they have going on in their lives.
The Supreme Court's action also triggered anti-abortion legislation in nearly half the country. Now, both critics and supporters of the pro-life movement are calling for renewed focus on life beyond birth.
Now it's time, with the potential demand for supporting families or women or teenagers who are facing unplanned pregnancies, helping more children who get placed in the foster care, whatever that looks like. We have to be ready to do more.
Michelle Douglas is the program director for The Call, a nonprofit in Arkansas mobilizing local churches to serve children and youth placed in foster care. She says the Bible is clear on the role of the church.
Undefiled religion is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress. And so we're really good at the widow, the traditional widow and the traditional orphan. But the modern day orphan is the child in foster care. And the modern day widow is often their mother who's doing it alone.
While post-Roe children will be adopted into loving families, more will likely also be born into households strained by addiction, poverty, and mental illness. Without support, those kids could end up going into an already strained foster care system.
What we've tried to do for years is help people see the urgency. And so I think maybe this has kind of heightened senses and kind of helped people to realize, hey, there are 400,000 kids in the foster care system today. 100,000 of those are waiting to be adopted. Maybe I could, step out and act and say yes today.
Christy Irwin, founder and executive director of Project Zero, helps families adopt foster children. She acknowledges many in the church have been working in this space for years, and that more is needed now than ever.
We need to all take a good internal look at ourselves and be willing just to put our yes on the table. That's really what it is putting our yes on the table, whatever that yes ends up being.
These leaders point out that taking a child into your home isn't the only way to help. Other options could look like providing meals to a foster family, helping with diaper drives, or a financial donation. Support comes in many forms and on all levels. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Coming up, a rare archaeological discovery, 2 different shipwrecks on the same site. We'll show you how these discoveries from ancient times are providing us a look into the world of the early church. That's when we come back. Welcome back to NewsWatch. A fascinating discovery off the coast of Israel is yielding spectacular treasures. 2 shipwrecks were found on the same site, leaving Roman and Jewish artifacts scattered across the ocean floor. These ancient discoveries are giving us a glimpse into the world of the early church. Chris Mitchell has the story from Jerusalem.
At the entrance of the harbor of Caesarea, divers from the Israel Antiquities Authority made a rare discovery.
To find 2 different shipwrecks mixed together on the same site in a difference of more than 1,000 years, to try to imagine that the ship was wrecked in the Roman period at the site, and then 1,000 years later another ship was wrecked maybe on the top of it or in the air of it. It was really interesting.
In one area, Sharvit and his partner found both bronze coins from the 3rd century and silver coins from the 14th century.
They are amazing, actually, from our point of view, because they are telling a story. It's not only the artifacts, it's the whole story of all the shipwreck. What is the ship were doing there? the period, what was the position or the situation of what was happening with the ship.
The treasures also included a bronze eagle figurine, a symbol of Roman rule, and a red gemstone with the carving of a lyre, or what's known as David's harp. In the book of 1 Samuel from the Bible, it says David played his harp for King Saul. They also found a gold ring with the reference from the New Testament.
This is the Good Shepherd ring found in the shipwrecks in the Mediterranean, and it helps tell the story of early Christians in the city of Caesarea during the Roman Empire.
As we know, the symbol of the Good Shepherd is one of the first symbols of Jesus, and actually the idea of the Good Shepherd was adopted by the most of the local population who actually were looking forward into the new religion, because in the Old Testament we actually have the reference to the Good Shepherd and his herd.
The ring also tells a story about Christians from Caesarea nearly 1,700 years ago.
To find a ring from the 3rd century when Christianity basically was still underground. Christians were persecuted during the 3rd century. It's only 100 years later, under Constantine, that Christianity becomes a state religion. So this is a ring of a Christian who lived in a period that Christians were still persecuted and killed, even in Caesarea. I think we have a pretty dramatic find here.
Very simple, very laconic, just the male figure bearing the lamb on his shoulders. Almost exactly the same image we can see on the walls of the catacombs in Rome, in the area where actually the services took place.
The artifacts, coins, and ring help reconstruct the puzzle of Caesarea's past.
The ring is fantastic, of course. I mean, we often find coins from the Roman period. You know, archaeology is like a puzzle. You take different elements, and the wonderful thing in archaeology is that you can piece things together. You know, we have the site, we have the coins, we have the ship, and then this beautiful ring. And everything suddenly comes together.
The ring also makes a personal connection.
This ring connects you to the people, right? Like, especially when you find something, I'm talking about just myself, when I see something like that, it's something which is very personal in a way, right? You try to imagine the particular person who was wearing this ring, what were his thoughts or beliefs. It's really touching. I'm not a religious person by myself, but when I see something like that, I feel this connection to someone who lived hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
The discoveries also reveal the port of Caesarea had a longer history than previously thought.
Because some of the people, or some of the archaeologists were thinking that the harbor was collapsed in the 1st century AD. Now we realize that the commerce and the ship were coming from all over the Mediterranean, also to Caesarea, in a later period, especially in the late Roman and early Byzantine periods.
Caesarea played a prominent role in the early church. The book of Acts documents the first Christian baptism of a non-Jew happened there, and from Caesarea, the Apostle Paul helped take the gospel to the world. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the laboratories of the Israel Antiquities Authority, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, it's a well-known phrase, choosing faith over fear, but it can be easier said than done. We'll hear from a former Miss America, broadcast journalist, minister, veterinarian, and more, who had to deal with fear in her own life right after this. We've all heard the popular phrase, faith over fear, but many, including some believers, actually struggle with fear and find it hard to activate their faith. So how do you overcome the adversity? Former Miss America 1990 Dr. Debbye Turner Bell is a veterinarian, broadcast journalist, minister, and motivational speaker. Yet with all of her accomplishments, she still dealt with fear. Now the author of Courageous Faith, a lifelong pursuit of faith over fear, she's inspiring others to live their lives with renewed passion and purpose. She joined CBN's The Prayer Link program to talk about her memoir and her experiences.
I understand it was a 30-year journey to your book, Courageous Faith. What motivated you to write it?
I feel like God had planted it in my belly and my soul, and it was something that I was supposed to do, to be in obedience to what God's purpose was for my life. 30 or so years ago, as I talked about my journey to the Miss America pageant, it took 7 years, 11 tries, in 2 different states to win a state pageant and get to the Miss America pageant. And all along the way, I was told I couldn't do it. I wasn't the right type. I didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes and long legs and all of those kinds of things. But I believe God's purpose was on it. And I persevered. And as I told that story, and then in speaking and preaching, talking about some of the other just difficulties that many of us face in life. I didn't get married until I was 42. I wasn't sure I was ever going to get married, and had a beautiful baby at 44, but didn't know if I was going to be able to conceive, and had 2 miscarriages after that. So all of these difficult challenges that required me to walk in the faith that I talked about, taught, and preached every day. And so many people said, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm a writer. I knew I was a speaker. I didn't know if I was a writer. So it took 30 years for the Holy Spirit to say, okay, either you're going to obey me or you're not. And I'm like, okay, yes, Lord, I'm going to obey you. And he opened the right doors at the right time. And the book is there in your hands. But what I want people to get from that is, when we have a purpose from God, when we have a call on our lives, if we'll simply say yes, he will equip us. He will help us get through the challenges, get up from the downfalls, and to complete the work that he has for our lives. And I've certainly lived that both through the pageant all those many years ago, but even today.
What a testimony of perseverance. Yes, 11 tries just to make it.
Powerful.
In your book, Debbie, you share intimate details of your life. You mentioned the miscarriages and even death threats. Talk about that.
So I was the second African-American to be crowned Miss America after Vanessa Williams. Third to hold the title, because when she gave up her crown, her first runner-up was also African-American. But, you know, back in those days, I was Miss America 1990, which feels like 1890. It was so long ago. But there were a lot of people that were not happy that this brown girl from Arkansas became Miss America. And there were parts of the country and places that I went where there was not always a welcoming reception. And in one particular large city, I received a credible death threat, so much so that law enforcement got involved, the FBI got involved, and I was put under police protection until they could get me out of that area safely. And I talk about in the book how I was basically sequestered in my hotel room. And I remember being on the phone with my mom, and my mother was a prayer warrior, and we prayed for protection. And I remember just praying, God, encamp an angel right out there outside my door, along with the police officer that was assigned to guard me. So if the police officer needed backup, the angel would be there to help him. So it was, I can laugh about it now, but it was a harrowing experience. And it was disappointing that, even in the 1990s, that there were, those who had, whatever was in their heart that would, mean this little girl from Arkansas harm just because they didn't like the color of my skin. And it was unfortunate, but I learned to just walk in faith and not walk in fear. And so many of us, especially now, that was 30 some years ago, but there are some things that have not changed in that period of time. And right now in our country, we're in upheaval over a myriad of issues. And it's easy as believers to walk in fear and be afraid for our children, afraid for our future. But faith tells us that when we trust in our good and awesome and perfect God, that we can walk in that faith and not let fear control our lives. And so that's what I hope people take from this book, is not to let the fear of failure or the fear of disappointment or the fear of betrayal to stop us from living the life that God intends for us to live.
Powerful, powerful. Dr. Bell, thank you so much for being with us today. Your book, Courageous Faith, A Lifelong Pursuit of Faith Over Fear. It is available wherever books are sold. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story with us. God bless you.
So good.
My pleasure. God bless you.
You can catch Prayer Link on the CBN News Channel tonight at 6:30 Eastern or on the CBN News app. Coming up, Americans celebrating Independence Day. We'll bring you a look at some of the beautiful fireworks displays around the country when we come back. Stay with us. And finally today, we're going to go out with a bang and bring you some of the sights and sounds of America celebrating its Independence Day last night. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow on CBN NewsWatch.